February 16th Louisville City Council meeting. I'm Mayor Ashley Stolzman. Because of COVID-19, this meeting is being held electronically and is being recorded. To request permission to speak during public comment periods, an attendee can raise their hand by clicking the raise hand button at the bottom of the screen. Attendees calling in can dial *9 on their phone and a raised hand will appear on your behalf. When I acknowledge a member of the public and the clerk unmutes you, you'll need to state your name, address, and your question or concern. Each person will have 3 minutes for their comments. If you wish to speak on another topic, you'll need to raise your hand again. Thank you for following these directions and helping us to maintain meeting decorum. City Clerk Muth, could we please have a roll call?
Councilmember Lipton?
Here.
Councilmember Dickinson?
Here.
Councilmember Brown?
Here.
Councilmember Lay? Okay. Mayor Stolzman?
Here.
Councilmember Fahey?
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Maloney?
Here.
And just for folks listening in, Councilmember Lay is here. He gave us a thumbs up. So that takes us to the approval of the agenda. Is there a motion to approve the agenda?
Motion to approve the agenda.
Is there a second?
Yes.
Thank you. Any discussion of the agenda? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you, everyone. The motion carries and the agenda is approved. This takes us to public comments this evening on items that are not on our agenda or items that appear on our consent agenda. So if any members of the public would care to comment on items that are not on our agenda this evening or on items that are on a consent agenda, please raise your hand at this time. Each member will have 3 minutes to tell us what they'd like to tell us. And just a reminder, council's here to listen and understand any comments that folks bring up, but since these items are not on our agenda, we can't take them up this evening. Our first commenter this evening is Sean Howe. And if you could tell us your name and address, and then tell us what you'd like to tell us.
Hi, my name is Sean Howe, and I live at 845 Trail Ridge Drive in Louisville. I come to you to voice, hang on, my screen just went a little crazy and I lost my notes. There we go. Okay, I come to you to voice my concerns about the youth in our community. Our young citizens, our future leaders are suffering. Teens need support. They need to return to their communities, their peers, their safety network, their schools. I have pursued every usual avenue of communication with our district to no avail. I have met with teachers and principals. I have met with 3 members of our school board. I have attended school board meetings and I have spoken at 3 of them. I have sent countless emails that either went unanswered or were answered with platitudes such as "thank you for sharing." We transferred our freshmen to Holy Family. Just up the road from Louisville, they are having full-time in-person high school with a population around 800. They have had a few cases of COVID as expected, traced to events outside of school, and none have resulted in spread within the school. Families with the means and opportunity are leaving in droves. Dawson is rumored to have a year-long waitlist, and Holy Family had record applications for next year. The impact of this will follow our district and our town for years to come. Our district continues to refuse to provide a plan to families and students. As of the last board meeting, we were told there may be announcements in early March, which would then give us a few weeks to implement a new plan. So now we have a plan to produce a plan, maybe. This is despite the current science showing the minimal spread of COVID in schools with precautions in place, despite the fact that half of BVSD staff received their first vaccines by February 13th, despite the CDC statement that teacher vaccines are not a requirement to safely reopen. The only explanation provided to parents is we work closely with our partners in public health. Direct contact with public health officials via email contradicts this statement, as does the fact that St. Vrain follows the same health department advice and has offered secondary students the option to attend 4 days immediately and 5 days anticipated after spring break. We still do not have a plan for our secondary students to attend more than 2 days per week. Many may not be aware of what our students are experiencing. Not only are they falling behind academically, but they are experiencing isolation, loneliness, and increasing levels of substance abuse and suicidal ideation. Their families are unable to plan for any return to the workforce. When they do attend school, they often arrive to a room monitored by a hired parent classroom monitor who will supervise the student while their teacher teaches remotely via Zoom. We have seen increasing vandalism and substance abuse in our communities. We are having to warn our kids about the fentanyl-tainted pills that could kill them. We recently had a minor discharge a weapon at the skate park. These are community issues. The science does not support what we are doing to our children. The harm far outweighs the risks of COVID transmission in schools. Parents have been forced out, The school board tasked with supervising the superintendents is no longer doing so, effectively removing our elected representation. There is no transparency and no accountability. I am aware that you do not supervise the school board, but city leaders across the country are getting involved. I'm asking you as community leaders to advocate for our young citizens. They need you more than ever before. Thank you.
Thank you, Sean. And if you'll just stay tuned for a few more minutes, we'll have general counsel comments after the approval of the consent agenda. Other members of the community have comments tonight on items that are not on our agenda. The next commenter is Lisa Hall.
Hi, sorry, can you hear me?
Now we can. Thank you, Lisa.
Hi, sorry about that. Okay, I'll start. Hi, my name's Lisa Hall. I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist and have been practicing almost 30 years in our area. I'm also the parent of 2 boys, one at college and one who's a Fairview freshman. I've lived in Louisville for almost 20 years and have raised my children here. My private practice has been located by Spice China for the last 14 years. I'm invested in our children, our families, and our community. I'm speaking today to ask for your help. I'm desperate as a mother and a professional who specializes in teen and family therapy. Although my own child's doing relatively well now, I'm so concerned for the well-being of our young people, particularly the teenagers who continue to be left behind across our nation in this COVID crisis, with an ongoing focus on kindergarten to 8th grade. And it continues, which I do not understand. Teens are languishing at home. This can't continue. Teens kill themselves. Young children do not. And our teens are dying at an unprecedented rate from suicides and overdoses right now, right here. BVSD still has not committed to bring teens back to school, not full-time, not even for the same 4 days that elementary kids have been getting since January 6th. I've been advocating for our kids for about 6 months now, and it has been exhausting. The runaround, lack of transparency, evasive, non-committal answers, and lack of proactive planning and strong leadership has gotten to me. Only 60% of our high school kids are showing up for the 2 in-person days that BVSD is offering them. It is a failure. After a year of online school, our teens have little connection to school, structure, or their education at this point. The new normal is not getting dressed, not leaving the house, and clicking onto a screen for hours every day. This is the opposite of what our young people need to go out in the world and become functioning members of our society. Our 31,000 children are impacted by the district's lack of leadership, and all of our lives hang in the balance. Our school board is not advocating for children. They're advocating for teachers, and many need the union support for their upcoming future political campaigns. Cherry Creek, St. Vrain, Weld, Jeffco, and Littleton have all committed to returning to full-time in person as soon as possible in March. I'm asking for you to help us secure a commitment from BVSD for a return to full-time school now. Without this, we can't move forward as a society and community. When you go to the board, you are going to get rhetoric and a lot of talk. You will not get a commitment. They will tell you there are too many moving parts. We need a commitment so that we can heal. Our city and community depends on it. It's safe. It's time. Our teachers will be vaccinated by mid-March. Please help.
Thank you, Lisa. And if you'll also stay tuned, we have general counsel comments after the consent agenda is approved. Any other members of the public care to comment on items this evening that are not on our agenda or items that do appear on our consent agenda? All right, seeing none, that takes us back over to our city council portion and to the consent agenda. Are there any discussions on the consent agenda? Mayor Pro Tem Maloney?
I'd like to make a motion to approve the consent agenda. I would like to make a note, if I may, Mayor. I do appreciate what the Chief of Police brought forward in item 4H. It's a continuation of a 1-year grant to assist the police officers with mental health issues. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there a second? Could you just unmute for us and we'll hear your second?
Second.
Thank you. There's a motion and a second. Any discussion of the motion? All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you, everyone. The motion carries. That takes us to council informational comments on pertinent items that are not on the agenda. So I just want to let the speakers know that City Manager Balser and myself have been asking the school district to give us access to the plan for reopening high school to understand what metrics they need and what their process will be and what they're looking at. And we haven't gotten it yet, but as soon as we have more information, we'll share it with the public through mayor's message, and we can put links on our website and give the community more information. So we'll keep working on getting that information and getting it out to the community as quickly as we can. Additionally, we are still working to make sure that all of the folks who qualify for vaccination are able to sign up for vaccination. And so anyone who's in one of the categories that qualifies, if you need help, make sure you reach out to the senior center or to other city staff, and we can connect you with the right people to make sure we can get everybody signed up for a vaccination who's qualified, so we can be well on our way to getting everybody vaccinated. So thank you also very much, and thank you everyone for your patience with the vaccination process. Any other council informational comments on pertinent items that are not on the agenda this evening? Seeing none, that takes us to our city manager's report.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council. Thanks for your comments, Mayor. I have nothing to add this evening. Thank you.
Thank you. That takes us to our regular business, and the first item of regular business is the Life in Louisville Awards. Life in Louisville is a fantastic program every year that council really looks forward to and the community really looks forward to. So I'll turn it over to staff for a presentation.
Good evening, Mayor and council members. This is Emily Hogan in the City Manager's office. I'm going to be covering the presentation tonight that the library staff have been helping organize for us this year. Staff is presenting the awards for the 13th Annual Life in Louisville Photography Contest. 48 Front Range residents submitted photos that chronicle events and daily life in Louisville from January 1st through December 31st of 2020. These photos will be added to the city archives to serve as a cultural reference for future generations. And then just pull up a presentation as well. Okay. So this year, we had 175 photos entered into the contest. We'd like to thank all of the participants and local photographers Jay Keeney, Aaron Cox, and Donna Larita for their time spent during the contest. Entries were separated into 8 categories: black and white, downtown or old town, iconic 2020, landscape, nature, people, student, and sunrise sunset. Judges selected winning entries in each category, as well as overall awards for student and grand prize. 27 finalist photos were selected and put on display on the city's website from February 2nd through February 9th, and the public was invited to vote on a People's Choice Award winner. With that, I am happy to announce the awards. So for black and white, third place goes to Chris Wheeler with God Bless the Waterloo. Second place is Robert Slater with Coal Creek Reflections. And first place is Sue Norris with Centennial Sentinel.
Emily, is there any way you can make your screen full screen mode for us?
Sure.
Sorry to interrupt.
No, it's no problem at all. I want to get the photos as big as possible.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay, here we go.
Thank
How's
you
that?
so much. Yep, that's great.
Okay. So for the next category, which is Downtown Old Town, third place goes to Xavier Torrance with Downtown Reflections. Second place is Kristen Begun with Breakfast Please. And first place is Richard Carandi with Comet Over Louisville. We also have an honorable mention for Kristen Begun for 740 Front Street. For landscape, third place goes to Brad Hayes with Harper Thunder. Second place is Joe Falaise with Harper Lake Reflections. And first place is Robert Slater with Coal Creek Respite. For nature, third place goes to Marty O'Connor with Not So Perfect Landing. Second place is Tamar Krantz with Coyote on the Track. And first place is Karen Krillios with I Think to Myself, What a Wonderful World. For people, Third place goes to Sally McMahon with McCaslin Overpass. Second place is also Sally McMahon with Mesa Flyover. And first place is Chris Wheeler with COVID Graduation. And we also have an honorable mention for Penelope Lacopo Price with Balfour Senior Living Memorial Day Outdoor Concert. For student, third place goes to Kevin Berry with Big Sun over Community Park. Second place is Calum Putney for Goslings at Warrenburg Pond. And first place is Melissa Glenn with Davidson Mesa Duck. For Sunrise Sunset, third place goes to Brad Hayes with Davidson Sunset Clouds. Second place is Steve Armenti with Social Distancing. And first place is Ashley Armenti with Looking Towards a Bright Future. For Iconic 2020, third place goes to Joe Felice with Stand Together. Second place is also Joe Felice with End of the Line. And first place is Sue Norris with Fire. We also have an honorable mention for Richard Corandi with Main Street Umbrellas. And the 2020 grand prize winner is Richard Corandi with Comet over Louisville. And the People's Choice Award winner is Joe Felice with Harper Lake Reflections. And congratulations to all of the winners, and thanks to everyone who submitted a photo and participated in this year's contest. Keep an eye out for your certificate, which will be mailed out soon. And we will also be posting all of the photos in a wonderful slideshow on our website, so keep an eye open for that. And that is it.
Thank you, Emily. I'd just like to take a moment on behalf of the entire community to thank the artists. This is incredible, the magnitude and talent that we have in our community, and looking at these pictures is amazing, and it's just so special to get to live here and then to get to enjoy these beautiful photos, to really see it through this artistic lens is quite fantastic. So thank you to everyone who participated, and special thanks to the award winners. Normally we would get to shake all of your hand and have cake together and coffee, and so we look forward to doing that once everyone gets vaccinated and we can get back to it. Thank you for sharing that great artwork with us this year. Would any other council members like to comment? All right, thank you, everyone. So that takes us to our next item of business this evening, which is resolution number 11, series 2021, a resolution recognizing the work of the Business Retention and Development Committee and discontinuing the Business Retention and Development Committee. We'll have a staff presentation this evening, and then we'll have public comments on the agenda item, and then council questions, comments, discussion, and action. So I will turn it over to staff for a presentation.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council. This is Megan Pierce, Economic Vitality Director. I'll be presenting the item about the Business Retention and Development Committee tonight. So the conversation of evaluating the role of Brad started late last year. The Economic Vitality Committee was established in 2020 with the specific role originally of developing the Economic Vitality Strategic Plan. That plan was presented to and adopted by Council on November 10th. And during that meeting, there was some conversation about the ongoing role of the Business Retention and Development Committee, foreseeing that the Economic Vitality Committee might be continuing its role longer related to the implementation of that strategic plan. Members of the Economic Vitality Committee felt that new council committee had been a successful addition, and there was a consensus to keep that group in place. There were considerations also about how the Brad committee overlapped with other stakeholder groups, as well as the additional workload for staff to manage 3 committees, including the Revitalization Commission. So the dialogue started at council. It moved over to Economic Vitality Committee. The BRAD committee also had several opportunities at their meetings late last year and early this year to talk about future committee structures, and members of the BRAD committee also participated in the Economic Vitality Committee discussions. There was a letter that was submitted to City Council for consideration about the future of the BRAD committee. That letter was previously shared with Council, but is also included in the meeting materials tonight. Just to keep everyone on the same page, the BRAD committee has sort of been in a holding pattern related to this dialogue occurring. So committee appointments were not made to BRAD for 2021. Those were held for the outcomes of this discussion. So they have 5 current members, as 2 members resigned during 2020. And then there aren't really any active projects in the works. So some of that is related to the holding pattern. Some of that is the workload related to the pandemic and the focus on that. So ultimately, the recommendation that came out of the Economic Vitality Committee and is before Council this evening is that the BRAD committee would be dissolved and the Economic Vitality Committee would remain in place. The committee suggested that they would invite the participation of the Chamber of Commerce and the Downtown Business Association if those groups wish to have regular representatives attend the Economic Vitality Committee meetings. There is a member of chamber staff that is currently one of the members of the BRAD committee. The Economic Vitality Committee also desired that they would have 4 non-voting business representatives that would participate regularly on the committee, but they haven't yet had a discussion about really selecting those representatives or exactly how it would be structured, since this was still coming before Council for consideration this evening. City attorney and staff have worked together to prepare the resolution that, should Council want to proceed, the Business Retention and Development Committee could be dissolved. And I'm happy to answer any questions that Council may have.
Thank you, Director Pierce. That'll take us over to public comment on this agenda item this evening. If any members of the public would care to comment on this agenda item, please raise your hand at this time. And our first commenter is Mark Oberholzer from the BRAD. Mark?
Yep. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Okay. It was funny. My audio was working just fine until you unmuted me, and then all kinds of weird things happened.
Oh, no. Can
Anyway,
you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you now. It's all working well. Thank you.
Great.
Yeah, thank you, Megan. That was a good representation of what's been going on. The big thing that I want to make sure of that does not happen tonight, or encourage anyway, is that I don't want BRAD to be dissolved and then nothing put in its place, like the addition to the EVC. I'm just a little concerned at the way the agenda is written, that it doesn't mention that, and the agenda title is pretty far deep in the packet. So I just want to make sure that that doesn't happen, because if BRAD goes away, which is fine, I think, and given all of the information that's out there and everything that's going on, I think it's the right decision that BRAD go away. And as the chair of BRAD, I think I'm in a unique position to have an opinion on that. But I want to make sure that it's replaced. So that's kind of the key thing. And my case in point, I think, is very good here, is one of the things that we miss if we don't have some sort of group that can have a conversation with each other, is the back and forth and the getting a full understanding of the positions of each group and the sides of the group. Because tonight I've got 3 minutes to speak, and after that I'm not able to speak again on this subject. And so if something comes up that I think needs clarification, or that I might be able to contribute something additional to, I won't have that opportunity. Whereas if we had the EVC meeting with some non-voting members that are part of the group, they would have a better opportunity to continue to have that dialogue, which is what I think is important, that the city and the business community continue to have a meaningful dialogue between each other. And I think that's all I've got. I think we're moving in the right direction. I like where all this is going. I just wanted to make sure that those key points are there. And that's all I have. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Mark. Are there any other members of the public that would care to comment on this agenda item this evening? Seeing no one, that takes us over to the council questions, comments, discussion, or action. Is there any council discussion on this agenda item? I'd like to thank all the members, current and former, of the BRAD for their service to the community And the work that's been done has been tremendous to date. And I think we have a good plan going forward with the Economic Vitality Committee. And they're going to talk about all the different ways to engage the business community to try to ensure that we hear the voices. So thank you very sincerely for everyone's service over the years. Councilmember Dickinson.
Thank you, Mayor, and thanks, Mark. Echo the mayor's sentiments about the group and the effort that's been put in, and Megan's effort in with that group as well. I want to make sure the rest of the council, the EVC has had a lot of conversations about this. So if there's any clarification that anybody needs about kind of what our vision is for that continued business engagement with city and staff. Happy to have that discussion now. Obviously, I think as written, the intention is for the EVC to discuss this further about who to add, how to add them, and their terms and all the stuff that would need to be kind of worked out in the details of that committee. So if there are any questions about that, feel free to fire away. But I see a couple other council members with their hands up now who are both on the EVC, but I'll stop there.
Thank you, Councilmember Lay.
Yeah, I wanted to echo your comments, Mayor. I think they were very well stated. I was the liaison to the Brad, I guess up to about a year and a half ago, and saw it in action during that year and certainly before as well. And I want to specifically call out Mark Oberholzer for his leadership and for his being the glue that I think held that group very much together, as well as the other folks who served on it and provided good assistance and counsel to us in the past. I really, I think, appreciate during the last few years that the various parts of the business community have sought increasing engagement with the council and the city in constructive ways. And I know that Chair Dickinson of the EVC and Pro Tem Maloney, as well as the mayor who was on the EVC before I joined it, I think have all kind of taken that that momentum forward, and I'm really looking forward to continuing the dialogue. We've had a whole variety of conversations about how we do this, and in some respects, we have limited resources and need to kind of consolidate our efforts. And I think what we've decided on is a good plan. I think it's like a lot of things, something of an experiment, and we'll see how it works. And I hope that it works well. But if, as Chair Dickinson said, if for some reason anybody, whether resident or employee or landlord or business owner or consumer has anything to comment on, we're going to certainly push to have people come and dialogue with us in those EVC meetings. So I think that'll be a real positive. But I do want to say thank you for all the help and thoughtfulness of Mark and others for the time that they've been on it. Very, very big commitment to the city, and we appreciate, because they've got plenty of other things to be doing with their time. So thanks.
Mayor Pro Tem Maloney.
Thank you, Mayor. I want to acknowledge the mayor and my colleagues' comments. I certainly agree with the sentiment of that. And I want to thank Mark Oberholzer for his leadership and for his comments and engagement in this topic. Brad was created purposefully, and we have to remember that. It was created when downtown was not what downtown is today, for example. And some of the programs we have like the BAP program and so forth, were not necessarily created by, but they certainly were encouraged and focused in very important ways for business retention and development for Louisville. So I think we all acknowledge what Brad has done, and not every committee is meant to be forever. You know, we had the mayor create the Economic Vitality Committee, and as I acknowledged in the Economic Vitality Committee meetings, 2020 was a challenging year, and 2021 is starting off to be challenging. And because of the agility of the Economic Vitality Committee, and being really that sort of connected with City Council in a policy way, we were able to do a number of things very, very rapidly. Certainly with the help of staff, and give staff, you know, tons of credit for that. But doing the dissolution of the Brad Committee does not mean that we are going to veer away from engagement with the business community. We need to have business dialogue. And I will repeat what I said in the November and January EVC meetings. You know, there's been some discussion about a certain number, whether it's 2, whether it's 4, of having business, you know, members part of the EVC in a non-voting capacity. I think that still needs some discussion, because as I look at the business challenges we have across Louisville that we're facing over the next 5 to 10 years, we're going to need to be able to focus the input from the business community in a broader way than 2 or 4 people, in my opinion, because some of it relates to downtown, some of it might relate to retail, a lot of it might relate to the development we're doing. So I want to keep an open mind in this discussion, and I think we have a starting point for discussion, but that's still to be determined, in my point. But with that, I'd like to make a recommendation to approve the Economic Vitality, what the Economic Vitality Committee recommended was the dissolution of the Business Retention and Development Committee. Thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem Maloney, if I could just clarify, are you moving to approve Resolution 11 Series 2021?
Thank you for the clarification. Yes, I am.
Thank you. There's a motion on the table. Is there a second? Thank you. There's a second. And Councilmember Brown, I'm sorry if I can't hear you. Your volume's coming in very quiet, but I did hear you that time.
Second. How's that?
Thank you. That's better. Thank you. There's a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion of the motion? All right, seeing that, could we please have a roll call?
Mayor Stolzman,
Yes.
Councilmember Fahey,
Yes.
Councilmember Brown,
Yes.
Councilmember Dickinson,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Maloney, Councilmember Lay,
Yes.
Councilmember Lipton.
Thank you, everyone. That takes us to our next order of business this evening, which is discussion direction of the Revitalization Commission's Phase 1 Wayfinding Signage Program. We'll have a staff presentation on this agenda item, and then public comment, and then we'll have council questions and comments and action. And it looks like Megan Pierce is going to take us through this as well.
Yes, you get to hear from me multiple times tonight. So what I'm presenting is on behalf of the Louisville Revitalization Commission. I am the staff liaison to that group. And to give you some context here, the wayfinding and signage plan may look familiar to members on the council, but I'm going to put this in sort of the context of what the LRC has been working on in the past year or so. So streetscape and connectivity for downtown is what the LRC considers to be its highest priority project area. So this is the Highway 42 urban renewal area. So a great deal of that is downtown itself, but it also incorporates the Highway 42 DLO area and part of the South Boulder Road corridor. The LRC developed focused areas so that investments that were made over time by the commission would have significant impacts. That's really a high desire of the commission and really a reason why they developed a work plan so that they would be able to prioritize those investments and also pace out work as opportunities became available. We started discussions with the LRC around parking, and that's sort of where parking and signage came out, and that developed into more of a concept that signage could be a focus of some of their investments. And in late last year, the LRC decided to include $130,000 in its 2021 budget, anticipating that there would be wayfinding signage work. So there is an existing plan, and in order to capitalize on resources and see a more immediate investment, staff suggested that the LRC could focus on implementation of the city's existing signage and wayfinding plan that was adopted in 2017. So that plan has already had public engagement and a vetting process. There's an existing sign family, the types of signs and specifically how they're designed and spec'd, and there's a phase location plan. There have been relatively few signs implemented to date. There's one monument sign and I believe 4 interpretive signs that have been placed. Improving the connectivity to and within downtown is really aligned with the objectives of the Highway 42 Urban Renewal Plan. So the LRC feels the signage that contributes to that connectivity is an important component of that. And also importantly, the LRC has the capacity and the funding to proceed with the project. This is the existing monument sign I mentioned out by the FedEx facility, so Empire Road and 104th. That's the most significant sign that's been put into place from that adopted plan. So phase 1, calling this a phase 1 in part because there's a phase location plan in the city's previous adopted plan, but also because the idea was to start and get some signage in place and then potentially expand the signage. Now, for the LRC to participate in the signage, it has to be tied to the LRC's objectives and to their work related to the Highway 42 Urban Renewal Plan, but I still think that may provide some additional opportunities for a future phase. But for first phase, we focused on locations that were really in that direct downtown area or the immediate Highway 42. This will raise awareness and visibility at highly trafficked vehicular intersections, but also some of the signage are to guide cars and pedestrians once they're in downtown. Staff is assisting LRC by reviewing the location map from the 2017 plan, going through the sign types that have been recommended, more specific locations, and potentially any utility conflicts or site-specific needs. If you've refreshed or looked at that phased location plan from the 2017 document, it's fairly general, and so you can kind of identify the intersection from the map, but you really have to then go walk it and look at the intersection and either if there are existing signs or where signs would logically be placed. So that's some of the work that's been going on since the LRC directed that this was a priority they hope to pursue. Staff is likely going to recommend that there would be some alternate signs and slightly varied sites, but all within the existing sign family. So sometimes when you get out to that intersection and you look at really the land that's available, where to put a sign and the size of that sign, it might change those things, but all within the existing sign family that was previously adopted. So in terms of next steps, this really relates to, the LRC and the City Council having a working relationship as well as an approval process that goes back and forth between the groups based on, the LRC's bylaws and the cooperation agreement between the groups. So the LRC wanted to see City Council concurrence that this is an initiative that they could pursue since it's using the city's adopted plan. And we did not want to get to a point where we had really taken the project to a further point and come and ask for the formal cooperation agreement, which would normally support these types of initiatives. We didn't want to get that far in the process before having a conversation about it. So we had already budgeted for it. The council did approve LRC's 2021 budget that included the $130,000. I would certainly anticipate, since those numbers were refreshed out of numbers back from 2016, 2017, there's likely to be some additional cost to that, but those would be conversations once we get further along. If there's concurrence to work on this, the next major step is preparing the bid package. So that's where I think the rubber is going to hit the road in terms of more work, and we would want to all be on the same page. The hope would be to advertise the project in the spring, and the goal would be that we would have a bidder that would be responsible for the sign fabrication as well as for the location needs and installation. So from a staff perspective, more contract management, less of our staff doing the implementation or preparing even the site. We're hoping that as much of that as possible is part of the bid. Ultimately, mentioning that cooperation agreement and the relationship between the city and the LRC is that ultimately the city council and the LRC would have to approve the bid that is proposed in order for the work to proceed. So there's going to be another opportunity where we come back and talk about this and have a formal agreement that outlines the responsibilities as well as the cost. That's all I have as part of my presentation, just noting that the LRC has identified this as a high priority goal for this year, and I'm happy to answer any questions, and there may also be a few members of the LRC present that may wish to comment.
Thank you. If there are any members of the public that would care to comment on this agenda item, please raise your hand at this time. Our first commenter is Lexi Adler from the LRC.
All right, can everyone hear me?
Yes, we can.
Awesome. Hi, everyone. My name is Lexi Adler. I live at 2537 Evans Avenue here in Louisville. And I'm also chair of the Louisville Revitalization Commission. So I'm here tonight to express my support, in particular for the implementation of the Phase 1 wayfinding signage program that Megan mentioned. And just have a few comments that I wanted to share. So first, I feel it's worth noting that at the LRC's last regular meeting, there was a full consensus of the commissioners to move forward with this signage project. And then we directed staff to bring this proposal here to council. And second, as you heard from Megan, important to note that the intention of this wayfinding signage is to work within the city's existing signage plan. So again, this should require less resources and time. And lastly, as you can see in the LRC's work plan in your packet, it is really a high priority of the commission at this time to implement this wayfinding signage. And this is really part of our larger vision to help enhance the connectivity and the streetscape downtown in the surrounding Highway 42 area. And this also includes DLO that we can't forget about. So for me, it's also about connecting people and riders and drivers, people who park, and that includes both residents and non-residents of Louisville, and of course, connecting people with our local businesses. So that's why I'm here and in support. Thanks.
Thank you. Our next commenter this evening is Graham.
Hi, how is everybody? This is Graham Smith. Sorry, I should have put my last name in there. I am also on the LRC, and I'm just echoing Lexi's comments. This is something we're excited about. We think it adds a ton of value, and it's also something that we think we can deliver with everything that happened in obviously 2020 and here 2021. This is one of those projects that can very easily kind of just keep getting pushed. So we'd really like to support everybody in the city and so on and so forth to deliver this. This is not super onerous. I say that because Director Pierce does a lot of the heavy lifting. But I think this is something we can deliver definitely in 2021. It adds a lot of value. And it's just a good sign coming out of this whole mess that we are looking at the future and looking beyond 2021 into how do we keep people in Louisville, get people around Louisville, and connect them to everything in between. So I just want to echo my support and just let you know the LRC is behind you guys 100%. And we'd love to deliver this for you. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you. I have lost my participant panel. I see no other public comments. I got it back. Any other members of the public care to comment on this agenda item? All right, thank you. Seeing none, that takes us back over for council questions and comments or discussion of the agenda item. Director Pierce, I have just a couple of questions. I know your time is very valuable to all of us, particularly, with all the work that council has put in the plan for economic vitality. So do you think that the LRC calculation of time spent, your time spent there, covers enough time to cover this type of an endeavor for you, or will we need additional resources to manage this contract?
No, I think it's a fair question, and planning staff and also engineering have some involvement in this. It's fortunately not something I can do independently on my own. I do think there will be a lift in terms of getting this to bid and then getting the bid reviewed and making sure that's current with our expectations. But yes, I think it's feasible, and a conversation I have had with the LRC and does relate to them having a work plan is that staff's capacity is limited, and to have clear expectations about where they want me to spend my time, we do have to choose what is a high priority on the work plan.
Right, and so I guess, as this carries on, like planning staff, for example, we put almost all our projects in the work plan on planning. Right, we have a lot of things we want to do on building code and overlays and things like that. So if this becomes resource constrained, if you could just take it back to the commission that we need additional funding for additional resources to be able to get it done. Because even though it seems like a simple thing to just hire a contractor, we have to manage the contract and manage the expectations and do all the design work. And so if we need additional staff resources, it needs to come from the LRC to cover the project, in my opinion. And then my other question is just around sort of like the way this has been categorized as the city's adopted sign plan. The plan that's in the packet, in my opinion, was never fully adopted by the city council. And you can see, like, for example, the sign that was installed doesn't meet the specifications in the sign plan. We said that the lettering was too small. We had the dates taken off the bottom of the monument signs. There were some issues with the parking and directional signs. There were some issues with the utility pole signs and how Excel will let us use the utility poles. So I would just urge caution to staff and the LRC to sort of say that this is a city adopted plan. I'm not sure that's my recollection of what actually occurred. Other council members have questions or comments? Councilmember Brown.
Thank you, Mayor. I appreciate it. Director Pierce, and perhaps, and this may even be a better question for some of our more, for some been on council longer than me, but we did receive one particular comment from a former council member about this particular item on the agenda. It sounds like it's something that we have considered before, and so I'm trying to understand what's different about this particular plan versus what was considered before and potentially and the council sort of passed on.
I can really only speak very briefly to that because I'm not sure why it wasn't fully implemented. So and from what I can track down, it was considered by council, it was tweaked, but I do believe it was adopted. I know there hasn't been a lot implemented from it. I think in part it hasn't had the funding, so it has to be prioritized and then it has to get funded and then there has to be capacity to implement it. But like any sign plans, there's usually also a lot of engagement and there may have been disagreement at the time it was adopted about whether it was really the right plan, and that may be what the mayor is speaking to, whether there really was full consensus even if the plan was agreed to, and so that may be what's out there. But what I focus the LRC on is that we would not be endeavoring to design or create new signs. I think if you start down that path, you start a new engagement and you're really developing a new signage plan. We would be working from the existing sign family. And to the mayor's point, there may be tweaks as you work through that, but the goal is that the plan in holistically is what you would implement.
Yeah, it sounded, thank you very much, Director Pierce. I appreciate that. It sounded like one of the major concerns was that signs were unreadable. And so I'm not sure how that got addressed in the original plan. But you know, that we don't want to have signs. It doesn't do anybody any good, including the Highway 42 corridor or the city in general, to put up a bunch of signs that nobody can read. So anyway, I don't know that that's necessarily the case, but I'd be interested to hear. Maybe I should just stop talking and let some of my fellow council members talk as well. So.
It looks like Director Zaccaro has his hand up, so we'll let him add some context to the conversation. Planning Director Rob.
Yeah, good evening, everyone. So I was around in 2016 when we brought the phased plan to city council. And we had about $130,000 budget then. And there were concerns about the legibility of the signs. One of the things we did is we actually did a mock-up banner and put it on McCaslin and did a test. And it did seem relatively small, so we did actually modify the sign. So the one that's near the FedEx facility that Director Pierce showed you is modified from the specifications. We roughly doubled the size of that sign, based on our analysis at the time on the ledge to make sure it was actually legible. And it was a little bit of a test case. So I think the question of legibility, we actually have a sign out there. I think if you drive by that sign, we have a real life example that you can see to determine if you think it's a good design, if it's legible and so forth, and if it's appropriate. I would also say that the signs that we're looking at implementing for this first phase of the project really includes, they're not those community entry signs. There are some of them, but it's really about directing people to Old Town, downtown, to parking, and really trying to support downtown. So anyway, there's just a little bit of background from what happened in 2016 and 2017, if that helps.
Thank you, Director Sakara. And just to clarify, the modifications that you discussed with removing the date and things like that, those are not in our packet. I mean, we just have the original design in the packet.
Yes, that's right. Yeah, those were really just kind of staff decisions. We removed the lantern element, and again, kind of doubled that sign just based on some field work and field analysis to try to get something that we thought would be to scale. Based on the setback of the sign and the speed of the roads and everything. But yes, that is not what's in the packet. Any modifications would have to be done as part of the process moving forward.
Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem Maloney.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you to Director Pierce for the presentation and Director Sakara for the clarification. I agree with the sentiment that my colleague Councilor Brown and as well as former Councilor Liu concerned about this. I mean, the picture in the packet is an okay picture, but it doesn't, I mean, I've been by that. I think that sign is much better than what we've seen before, and it's better than the mock-up that we had on McCaslin. So it's not really an issue of not thinking that we need signage. It was really about the form of the signage where the previous council, took some pause. So as long as Director Sakara is involved and understands our concerns, I'm not worried about that. I will note that this is an item that was approved in the LRC budget. So, I mean, we could say, no, we don't want to do this particular item, but we did send the message to the LRC. We sent the message to staff. This is something that was part of their agenda. And so they've done the work and they're coming before us saying, okay, we're ready to proceed with what is considered to be a high priority item. So I would feel remiss in backing up from that. Where I would go from there, though, is I know the work plan has a lot of items on it, and I know our transportation plan for the city has a lot of items on it, and the crossover is Highway 42. And so we canceled our meeting with the LRC. I think it was either May or June. So we never really synced up with the LRC as a council and the LRC. So I'm going to try to do that right now because I think the work plan the LRC has, Section 2 is the Highway 42 area, and on the work plan for the city council, we're talking about transportation issues. I think we need to be looking at what funding that the LRC has and how it can be invested in such a way, especially along Highway 42, where the city and the state and maybe some of the recovery money could be invested in long-term solutions that make a big difference. And so I'm really just talking about how we could be looking forward. I support this one because this is something that we already basically approved through the budget process. But I think anything we do in the future, I would like to see us look at the Highway 42 area of the LRC work plan. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councilmember Lay, and our LRC representative on the council.
Yeah, to Pro Tem's comment. Of course, the council can nix those, the spending of money that LRC has included in a budget. I think that's the reason why our chair of that committee is here tonight to express support. I with all respect to former council member Lou, there isn't a sign that we have ever had before council that council member Lou liked. And I've spoken with her plenty of times about that, and I appreciate it. I think there's questions that anybody can raise about signs. I think the signs personally are fine, or I wouldn't have voted in favor of sending that over here from the LRC. I think Director Zaccaro has provided a good explanation of kind of where things stand. I think he's going to, they're not going to put up signs that are unreadable. I don't really think that we need to belabor it too much, but I think the sign, we did approve the sign plan, and it has sat just a bit pending an appropriation of money for it. But we've, I think if there's a desire to kind of stop or take a pause or whatever, I suppose it is what it is. I hope we don't do that. I think we're on a good track. So with that, turn it over to the next person in line.
Thank you, Councilmember Lay. Next, we have Councilmember Lipton.
So my recollection is much of what's already been stated, particularly by Rob. My recollection is that I'm not sure we actually took an action to approve the sign package, but I'm not sure we were asked to take an action. I think we spent a lot of time on the same sign package in a study session, and not everybody liked every aspect of the sign package, which is natural. But the sign package, or the elements of the sign package, were vetted and reviewed by Planning Commission. If I remember correctly, public had an opportunity to get input. And I think we got hung up a little bit on the monument sign, and without a lot of, concern or detailed issues on the rest of the sign package. And that led to upsizing the entry signs, the monument signs, which then was first implemented with the Federal Express building, because as part of their arrangement, they had to provide an entry sign, and we had to approve something as part of the PUD, I believe. So we did, or staff did, get to a point with that sign that was upsized and readable, and I personally think it looks fine. But there's a lot more to the sign package than just the entry signs. So I think the rest of the sign package actually got quite a bit of support from the city council. I also personally, and I said this before, that I'm not sure city council is any more expert in designing signs than other people in the community, including the Planning Commission, certainly staff, and certainly our consultants that we engage to develop a sign package. But we are apt to jump in, and we our backgrounds, as far as I know, are not about architecture and the kind of background you need in designing signs. So I think my view is we look at this more on a policy level instead of trying to approve colors and letters and all of that. And it's disappointing we haven't really put up many signs since then. It's been kind of stalled, and we do need signage. We need wayfinding. We need identification. I think this is a great opportunity to at least get that program started and to do something. Not to say it's going to be perfect, but it's good to do something, even if it isn't perfect, because if it's not perfect, it's not going to be the end of the world. So I believe this is a good step forward, and I would certainly support moving this forward, and appreciate the LRC's willingness to show some leadership in this. Thank you.
Next, we have Councilmember Dickinson.
Thank you, Mayor. I don't usually agree with anything that Councilmember Lipton says, but I agree with everything you just said. No, I think that's fair. I think what I like the most about what you said, Councilmember Lipton, is I have my opinions, right? And I might think certain things about the signs. You know, we're 7 different, people who might have different thoughts about all of it. And at some point, you got to get out of the way and let something happen. So, I might have an opinion about it. It matters to an extent, but I think really, do we want to be using resources for wayfinding? And if so, do we trust our, experts to be making good decisions? I'll say driving by that sign during the day, I think it looks fantastic, and driving by at night, I think it could be improved. But like, that's where I have to stop. Like, I don't know how to improve it. I don't know exactly. I can't put my finger on it. It just, when I drove by at night, I'm like, oh, that's a little weird. So, I'm in support of moving forward and adding more signs, and continually, trusting staff to look at what we're doing and making improvements and staying within the, the design that we've seen and that we presented. So I don't have a ton to add, Mayor, but I'm in support.
Councilmember Brown.
Thank you. I just wanted to say thanks to Director Pierce, to Director Zaccaro, and also to Council Members Lay, Mayor Pro Tem Maloney, and Councilmember Lipton for their sort of historical perspectives and their thoughts on this particular issue. I appreciate and very much support the idea of that we need to have signs so that people can find their way to some of these some of these areas in town. So I just wanted to make sure that we had done our due diligence based on the previous work. So thank you very much.
Thank you. So I just pulled up the meeting minutes from 2017, and on April 18th, the sign code definitely failed to pass on a 3-3 vote. So I guess I don't object to moving forward and looking at these things, but I do think we need to understand what we're talking about. And so just encourage the LRC to, number one, put signs up that are legible. I think we can all agree to that. And I think that's a good principle. And so what's in the packet is not what's been made because of modifications that were requested by City Council. So to not just go forward and say, this is our sign package, because I'm not sure that's an accurate statement. So maybe it came back at a future time with modifications, but what's presented in front of us this evening is not the modifications that were requested. So I just think we should give direction to move forward, to improve the wayfinding in downtown, but to not act like what we have in front of us is absolute set in stone. That if the signs need to be bigger to be legible, if the parking signs need to be universal standard parking signs so that people actually can find the parking spaces, that we put, signs in that are useful. But I don't object to putting in signs, and the LRC working on the project. And I think the second principle to follow is that if this becomes a tremendous burden on staff, whether it be the planning department or engineering department, that we need to seek additional resources from the LRC to cover additional staff costs so that we can hire additional staff to do it. Because we have a lot on our work plan this year, and we really risk being able to accomplish our goals if we go down this route. Are folks okay giving that direction, that one, the plan is not set in stone, that the wayfinding can be modified as need be, and two, that we may need to seek additional funding if we need additional staff? Are folks okay with those principles? And that, yes, generally we're very supportive of a wayfinding program and excited to see what they come up with. I see a lot of head nodding. Councilmember Fahey.
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, I agree with what you're saying. We do need a sign process. And this was not agreed on. I remember going to the public open houses to view all the sign options, and while when you go into the room and look at the signs, they look lovely and they were all color coded and it looked like a wonderful process. But then when you actually got that sign out on McCaslin, it was really obvious that it was too small. I really appreciate the fact that staff went back and doubled the size and increased the letters and made it much more legible. I think if they do that with all of the signs to make sure that they're legible, and not just for drivers, but also for people on bicycles that are sometimes going as fast as a car. So they can't have a small sign either. But I do generally greatly approve of the whole idea of putting in consistent signs. I also like the idea of that consistency so that citywide, no matter where you are in the city, this means parking or this means a city building. So as long as there's consistency and they're readable, I say go for it.
All right. Director Pierce, is that enough direction on this agenda item this evening?
Yes, thank you.
And thank you to the LRC members for coming tonight and participating, and we look forward to seeing what you all do. And Councilmember Lay, will you take that back to the rest of the group? Thank you very much, sir. All right, so that takes us to our next order of business this evening, which is an executive session. I'm going to turn it over to our city attorney, Kathleen Kelly, to open it up for us this evening.
Thank you, Mayor. As noted on the meeting agenda, the mayor is requesting an executive session for consideration of water rights, acquisitions, and dispositions only as to appraisals and other value estimates and strategy under CRS Section 5-2C of the Home Rule Charter and CRS Section 246402-4A. Specifically concerning a potential purchase of new water rights and a potential sale of existing water rights. Prior to entertaining any motion, the city clerk will read a statement required by the city code.
It is the policy of the city to conduct public business and meetings open to the public. While an executive session is inappropriate to take straw votes, keep minutes, or make any final decisions. It is the duty of each council member to ensure executive sessions are conducted in strict compliance with this ordinance, state and federal law, and any applicable provisions of the state and federal constitutions. If at any time the scope, nature, or parameter of this executive session goes beyond the publicly stated topic, it is the responsibility of the City Council to terminate and cease any further deliberation within the executive session and return to the public meeting. Only those topics described in city ordinances may be discussed in an executive session. Those topics are summarized as, where federal or state law requires the information being discussed remain confidential, certain personnel matters involving only employees directly appointed to the City Council and other personnel matters upon request of the city manager or mayor, consideration of water rights and real property acquisitions and dispositions, but only as to appraisals, value estimates, and strategy, and legal consultation with an attorney representing the city with respect to pending litigation.
Regarding the authority for the executive session, Section 5-2C of the Home Rule Charter authorizes an executive session for the purpose of consideration of water rights, acquisitions, and dispositions by the city, but only as to appraisals and other value estimates and strategy for the acquisition or disposition of such property. An executive session for this purpose is also authorized by the Open Meetings Law, Section 24-6-402-4A of the Colorado Revised Statutes. With that, Mayor, you may entertain a motion to go into executive session for consideration of water rights, acquisitions, and dispositions.
Thank you. I move to go into executive session for the purpose of consideration of water rights, acquisitions, and dispositions, and that the executive session include our city manager, Heather Balser, Public Works Director, Kurt Kohler, Deputy Director of Utilities, Corey Peterson, and City Attorney, Kathleen Kelly. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. We will need a roll call vote on this motion.
Councilmember Fahey?
Yes, but I will say I don't have a link in to the executive session.
City Attorney Kelly, can you email that to Councilmember Fahey? Councilmember Fahey?
Yes.
Councilmember Lay?
Yes.
Councilmember Lipton?
Yes.
Mayor Stolzman,
Yes.
Councilmember Dickinson,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Maloney,
Yes.
Councilmember Brown.
Yes.
Thank you, everyone. The city council will now adjourn into executive session. And for members of the public, when we're finished with our executive session, we'll come back to this Zoom.
Meredith,